Hey, I'm Dr. Wilson. I'm a PhD molecular biologist, and welcome to another COVID debunking video. What better way to celebrate spooky season than to check in on who I think is the craziest and worst anti-vaxxer out there, Steve Kirsch. So I'm going to get into some claims later in the video, but just to give you an idea of who Steve Kirsch is, let me spin you a little yarn first. So picture this. You've worked hard all day, and it's been kind of a rough one. Your new hire just contaminated some cells, and Jerry and QC microwaved fish again. You come home, you're ready to relax and forget all of it, and then suddenly this goober shows up at your door, knocking on it and insisting and demanding that you talk to him right now about vaccines. Obviously, that would be really creepy and unacceptable to anybody, so you call the cops on this guy, and he proudly videotapes the whole thing and claims that he was in the right and that he's a hero. Yeah, that guy who knocked on your door and demanded you talk to him about vaccines is Steve Kirsch.
So, what's your name?
My name is Steve Kirsch.
Steve Kirsch?
Yes.
Okay.
And the doctor whose house that he went to is a chair of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices.
So you're saying you're here to speak with them regarding something about the CDC?
Yeah, she's on the CDC outside committee for vaccine safety.
Because we got a call regarding you coming over here multiple times, and it seems like they don't want to talk to you.
Well, now it seems that way because she called the police on me.
Okay. Were you
So she clearly, no, because there was nobody here, right? I would ring the doorbell and nobody would answer. And so I would come back hoping to catch her at home. She's clearly at home now, and what's clear is that she's absolutely avoiding me.
It is not normal behavior to stalk and track down a doctor just so that you can go to their house and spout anti-vaccine conspiracy theories at them. That is some real delusional stalker behavior, and that's the guy that was invited on Fox News to talk about vaccine safety. So let's see what he said.
They told the agencies, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH said that these vaccines were safe and effective. And when I started seeing my friends die and be injured, and I started looking at the data, there was no question that this vaccine is the most dangerous vaccine ever created by man. It is 1,000 times more deadly than the smallpox vaccine.
Wow, bold claims there. Bold claims. Wrong, but bold. He just ignores the fact that COVID vaccines are definitely the most heavily surveilled vaccines in history when it comes to their safety in the general population. Not only does the US and every major healthcare system in the world have systems specifically designed to track adverse events of a vaccine that newly rolled out into a population and monitor those reports for any increases in specific diseases or adverse events or ailments or anything like that, and flag it and investigate it. What does the data say on all of those fronts? It says they're safe. Seriously, every single publication from every single vaccine safety monitoring system from around the world has concluded the same thing, that these vaccines are very safe. I will link several of these reports in the description below so that you can read them for yourself. But you might ask, how do we know that these systems are working? Are they suppressing data? Well, there's no evidence of that, and they're working just fine. In fact, these systems were so sensitive that they detected a rare 1 in 1 million chance of a blood clotting disorder following the J&J and AstraZeneca vaccines. If you recall, this was a big news item at the time, and the rollout of these vaccines in America, at least, was halted for 1 week. Now, as a result, there is a preferential recommendation for the relatively safer mRNA vaccines as opposed to the vector-based J&J and AstraZeneca vaccines. That's because mRNA vaccines do not carry this risk of rare and potentially fatal blood clotting disorders. These same systems also flag the fact that mRNA vaccines can be associated with myocarditis in rare cases, myocarditis being a word that many people learned for the first time in the past 2 years. I've already made a video about myocarditis and COVID vaccines, but the gist is that myocarditis caused by vaccines is very rare and most often extremely mild, and it resolves on its own. It does not cause permanent damage, and people normally recover with no medication needed. Meanwhile, myocarditis and other heart complications caused by infections, including SARS-CoV-2, can be much more serious, permanently damaging, and life-threatening.
And I could not get even a single minute in front of any Democratic congressman.
Yeah, but he did get to ask a question at the Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices meeting, and that was really embarrassing for him. I already made a video about that. You can check it out if you want.
But you didn't stop there. You did your own research. What did you find? What did you find was effective, and what was the reaction when you put it out there?
Well, what I found was that hundreds of thousands of Americans have been killed by this vaccine.
How does he know that, you might ask? What kind of research did he do? Well, I'll tell you. His research involved putting out surveys to his audience on Facebook and Substack. That's it. That's all he did. Just surveys to his social media followers. And then he extrapolates from them and applies it to the entire population. Because that's what scientists do, totally. Yeah, he's dumb. Like I said, there are already several systems in place that work to detect whether or not a vaccine is safe in a general population. These systems can detect new adverse events that arise when given out to millions of people, even if they're rare. But what really makes me laugh is this idea that hundreds of thousands of Americans have been killed by vaccines. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can test this so many ways just by looking at population data at your fingertips right now. For example, after about 2 years of the pandemic, 1 million Americans were killed by COVID. And we can see this very clearly in the excess deaths data. These are deaths that happen above what is a normal baseline for a country. These excess deaths are apparent with each wave of COVID, which killed hundreds of thousands of people. So if vaccines were killing hundreds of thousands of people, it would be pretty dang obvious in this data, but there is absolutely no sign of it. Furthermore, we can look at other countries. For example, Australia or New Zealand, countries that did not have large waves of COVID earlier in the pandemic, but vaccinated their populations to a high percentage. If vaccines were killing hundreds of thousands of Americans, you would expect them to kill a similar proportion of citizens in Australia or New Zealand or Japan or South Korea. But nope, no sign of any mass deaths at all.
And my estimates are that there are tens of millions of vaccine injured in America.
Estimates based on highly biased social media surveys and a misinterpretation of VAERS. So nothing. His ideas are based on nothing. And what do I mean by a misinterpretation of VAERS? Well, something you'll commonly hear Steve Kirsch claiming is that VAERS has an underreporting problem. So his extrapolation is based on that underreporting figure. But the problem with that underreporting figure is that it specifies that that underreporting is mostly made up of trivial reports that go unreported, such as they had a sore arm after an injection or a headache. You're not really going to go through the trouble of filling out a VAERS report for something like that, now are you? But in his mind, he wrongly assumes that this applies to all adverse events. So that's mostly why he gets those insanely wrong numbers that completely disagree with reality, but he doesn't care. He's on the anti-vaccine train, and he's going to ride it all around Crazy Town. At the end of the day, someone who is actively spreading anti-vaccine disinformation online is like someone who lied on their resume, didn't get the job, showed up anyway, took a dump on the floor, and proudly walked away. And Steve Kirsch is the worst of them. And let me be clear, I'm talking about people who actively spread disinformation like Steve here, not the people who are just misled or vaccine hesitant or what have you. I'm talking about the people who know exactly what they're doing. They know they're wrong, but they don't care. They just keep going. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's video. I certainly enjoyed it. I hope you did too. If you did, don't forget to check out the links in the description where I posted all the science that I talk about in this video. Don't forget to subscribe, leave it a like, and maybe check out my Patreon if you want as well. Anyway, thanks again. That's going to do it for this week. And be sure to stop by next week where I'll be debunking some more funky stuff. See you then.